A Journey to the Moon. Chapter 1. The Dreamer and the Engineer. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with hues of deep purple and scattered stars. In the small town of Clearwater, nestled between rolling hills and the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, there lived a girl who dreamed of things most others could not even imagine. Sophie Maddox was not an ordinary 16-year-old. While other teenagers her age spent their evenings at the local diner, gossiping or hanging out with friends, Sophie was at her workbench in the attic of her parents' old farmhouse, tinkering with mechanical parts, sketching designs for machines, and researching rocket science, something that fascinated her to the core. Sophie's dream was simple, at least in her eyes. She wanted to go to the moon. She had always been fascinated by the stars. Her earliest memories were of lying in the tall grass behind her house, staring up at the moon, wondering what it would be like to stand on its dusty surface and look down at Earth. What was it like to feel the weightlessness, to see the vastness of space, stretching endlessly beyond? These thoughts had been a constant companion since she could remember. And now at 16, Sophie was more determined than ever to make that dream a reality. But how? That was the question. She had spent years studying the Apollo missions, reading everything she could find about space exploration, and even building small models of spacecraft. But every time she faced the question of how to actually make the leap from her quiet life in Clearwater to the moon, she hit a wall. After all, no one in her town had ever gone to space, and her family did not have the money to fund a space mission. The nearest thing to space was the satellite dish on the roof of her house, which only barely picked up a signal for the Discovery Channel. Maybe someday, she would often say to herself, though deep down she knew that somedays were a word most people used to push their dreams aside. But Sophie was not the type to give up easily. She had a mind that was always turning, always seeking new ways to solve problems. Her parents, who were kind and supportive, but largely practical, did not fully understand her obsession, but they indulged her. They let her turn the attic into her workshop, allowed her to order supplies for her projects, and encouraged her whenever she spoke of her dream. It was during one of those late nights in her workshop that her dream began to take shape in ways she never thought possible. Chapter 2. A Dream Takes Shape. Sophie sat hunched over her workbench, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. The latest model of her homemade rocket, an ambitious project that had been taking shape for months, sat in front of her. It was not much yet, just a skeletal frame of metal and wiring, but it was progress. Every piece was carefully designed, every bolt and screw meticulously placed. She had watched the videos, read the books, and simulated countless hours of data, but she still did not know if it would ever work. Still, she had to try. Her fingers tightened around a wrench, turning it carefully. A loud knock on the door startled her. She wiped her hands on her work apron and went downstairs, curiosity bubbling inside her. When she opened the door, she found her best friend, Theo Brooks, standing there, holding a stack of papers. Theo was a quiet boy, a year older than Sophie, and he had been her closest companion since childhood. He was the kind of person who saw the world through a practical lens, always focused on the details, always thinking ahead. His talents lay in computer programming and physics, a perfect complement to Sophie's mechanical prowess. "You are still up here?" Theo asked, stepping inside, his eyes scanning the workbench. "You know, you really should sleep sometimes." Sophie grinned. "Sleep is overrated. Besides, I am onto something big." Theo raised an eyebrow. "Something big? Like what? More rocket parts?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, but not just that. I have been thinking about it, Theo. I have been researching modern rocket propulsion, and I think I have figured out a way to build a small, personal spacecraft." Theo stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he exhaled slowly. "You want to build a spacecraft to take yourself to the moon? Sophie, I admire your dedication, but do you realize how insane that sounds?" "I do," Sophie replied, her voice steady. "But I am not going to just sit around and wait for someone else to do it. I am going to make it happen, and I want you to help me." Theo looked at her, the seriousness in her eyes cutting through his skepticism. He hesitated, but then placed the stack of papers on the table in front of her. "Fine, but this is not going to be easy. And we are going to need more than just duct tape and some spare parts." "I know," Sophie said, her face lighting up with excitement. "That is why I have been working on a plan. We need to build the propulsion system first, something efficient enough to break Earth's atmosphere." Theo nodded slowly. "We will need a team, more resources, and access to some serious technology. This is not something we can just do from your attic." Sophie bit her lip. "I know, but I have been thinking about that too. I have an idea, but it is risky. We might need to reach out to people who could help us, people in the space industry, universities, maybe even investors. I am going to need your help with the calculations and the simulations. I cannot do this alone." Theo stood still for a moment. Then, finally, he smiled. "All right, Sophie, I am in. Let us build a spacecraft." Chapter 3. Reaching Out. Over the next few weeks, Sophie and Theo worked tirelessly, day and night. They scoured the internet for open-source rocket designs, spent hours calculating thrust-to-weight ratios, and brainstormed ways to acquire materials. Theo's knowledge of programming and physics proved invaluable, while Sophia's ingenuity in mechanical engineering kept the project grounded in reality. They knew they could not build a spacecraft from scratch in the attic, but they could certainly start the planning and preliminary work. One afternoon, as the autumn leaves began to fall outside, Theo arrived at Sophie's house with a large envelope in hand. He dropped it onto her workbench with a triumphant grin. "What is this?" Sophie asked, looking up from the schematic she had been drawing. Theo's grin widened. "A letter. From a private space contractor." Sophie's heart skipped a beat. "You mean?" "Yeah," Theo said, sitting down beside her. "I sent out a few inquiries to some companies, explaining our idea. I thought it was a long shot, but they actually replied." Sophie tore open the envelope, her fingers trembling with excitement. Inside, there was a letter from Lunatech Innovations, a private aerospace company known for its work in space tourism and research. The letter invited her to attend an informational session on their upcoming projects, with a note that they were interested in innovative ideas for lunar exploration. "They want to meet with us." Sophie whispered. "They are interested in what we have got," Theo said, leaning back in his chair. "This could be our chance." Chapter 4. The First Step. Sophie and Theo arrived at the headquarters of Lunatech Innovations a week later. The building was sleek and modern, with large glass windows reflecting the clear blue sky. Inside, The space was filled with people in business attire, all buzzing with excitement and purpose. The atmosphere was electric, a far cry from the quiet, cozy attic, where Sophie had spent countless hours dreaming of this moment. As they waited for their meeting, Sophie could hardly contain her excitement. The idea of speaking to people who had the resources, expertise, and funding to make her dream a reality was beyond anything she could have imagined. This was the big break. Finally, they were ushered into a conference room where they met with two representatives from the company, Dr. Eliza Turner, a seasoned rocket scientist, and Marcus Wells, a young entrepreneur who had co-founded the company. Both of them looked skeptical but intrigued as Sophie and Theo presented their ideas. "We have developed a concept for a small spacecraft capable of reaching the moon using efficient propulsion systems and lightweight materials," Sophie explained, her voice steady despite the nerves running through her. Marcus Wells leaned forward, his interest piqued. "You are suggesting that you have designed a spacecraft for lunar travel, and you are how old?" "I am 16, Sophie replied, not missing a beat. "And this is my partner, Theo." Theo, though quiet, held up his laptop, showing them the data they had compiled. Dr. Turner raised an eyebrow. "And you have actually conducted simulations, built prototypes?" "We have started with a few basic designs and calculations," Theo said. "We have got the math behind it. Now we need the resources and a team to make it a reality." There was a long pause as Dr. Turner and Marcus exchanged glances. Finally Marcus spoke. "All right, Sophie and Theo," he said. "You have brought our attention. We will help you build this. But understand this is just the beginning. It is going to take everything you have got, and more. Are you ready for what is ahead?" Sophie's heart soared. "Yes, we are ready." Chapter 5. The Launch. Months passed as Sophie and Theo worked with Lunatech to bring their vision to life. They faced countless challenges, technical setbacks, budget constraints, and sleepless nights, but each obstacle brought them closer to their goal. Sophie never wavered in her determination, and with Theo's expertise, they developed a spacecraft that was unlike anything the world had ever seen. And then, finally, the day arrived, the launch. The culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and belief in a dream. As Sophie stood in the control room, watching the countdown clock tick down, she felt a sense of awe and wonder she could barely describe. This was it. She was about to make history. 5, 4, 3, 2. The rocket ignited. Chapter 6. Into the unknown. The roar of the rocket's engines filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath Sophie's feet. Her heart raced as the countdown ended and the spacecraft, Lunae, lifted off the ground, slowly at first, then with increasing speed as it soared into the sky. For a brief moment, the world seemed to stand still. The dream she would nurtured for years was now unfolding before her very eyes. She was on her way to the moon. Through the thick glass of the control room window, Sophie watched as the earth grew smaller and smaller, the familiar landscape of clear water fading into the distance. She could barely comprehend what was happening. 1 minute she had been sitting at her workbench in the attic, sketching designs and dreaming of a distant, impossible future. The next, she was sitting in the cockpit of a real spacecraft, hurtling through space toward the moon. Beside her, Theo sat hunched over a control panel, his eyes flicking between the screens in front of him, ensuring everything was running smoothly. He was the one who had kept everything grounded, calculating the necessary parameters, running simulations, and double-checking every equation. Sophie could not have done this without him. "How are we doing?" Sophie asked, her voice shaky but excited. "Thrusters are functioning perfectly," Theo replied, his fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. "We are on track for the moon's orbit. Just a few more hours until we break through the atmosphere." "You are doing great." Sophie's stomach fluttered. "We are really doing this, are not we?" Theo looked over and smiled. "We sure are. No turning back now." For the next few hours, they remained in the cockpit, their attention focused on the screens in front of them. As they passed through Earth's atmosphere, Sophie felt the familiar pressure in her chest, the gravity that kept her grounded, slowly begin to lift. The view outside the windows was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Space was a vast, endless expanse, and for the first time in her life, she truly felt the weightlessness that she had only read about. The spacecraft was small, only designed for two, but it was equipped with everything they needed for the journey: advanced life support systems, fuel for propulsion, and a small crew compartment where they could rest. Sophie's thoughts wandered to the moon, its silvery glow always visible in the sky, just out of reach. The unknown was now within her grasp. Chapter 7. The First Sign of Trouble. The serenity of the journey, however, did not last long. About 3 hours into the flight, just as Sophie was beginning to relax, her console beeped loudly. Theo's expression shifted from calm to concerned as he scanned the readings. "Something's off," Theo muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. "We are losing fuel pressure in one of the tanks. It is not major, but we will have to divert some resources to correct it." Sophie's stomach twisted. "What does that mean? Are we going to be okay?" Theo did not look at her. He was focused entirely on the screens in front of him. "I am running diagnostics now. It is nothing catastrophic, but we will need to adjust the course a bit. We might have to conserve some of the fuel." Sophie nodded, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "How much time do we have?" "Plenty," Theo said, but the hesitation in his voice made Sophie uneasy. "I just need to recalibrate the fuel systems." "We will be fine." Sophie looked out the window, her eyes searching the stars. They were surrounded by endless black, but the moon was starting to come into view, a pale glowing orb against the infinite expanse. It felt surreal to be so close, but now, with the technical problem hanging over them, she could not ignore the nagging feeling in her gut. Space was a vast and unpredictable place, and no amount of preparation could change that. The next few hours passed in tense silence as Theo worked on fixing the problem. Sophie tried to keep herself calm, her thoughts drifting between the calculations and the awe of being on the verge of landing on the moon. She was so close, but the unknowns of space exploration kept gnawing at her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Theo sat back, wiping sweat from his brow. "All right, we have got it under control. I adjusted the pressure flow, and the systems stabilized. We have lost a little fuel, but nothing we cannot recover from." Sophie let out the breath she did not realize she had been holding. "Thank you." "That was a little too close," Theo smiled, though it was strained. "You are welcome. We will be landing in a few hours, and we are still on course. Just keep your seatbelt fastened, and we will be fine." Chapter 8. Touchdown. The next few hours passed with a steady hum of anticipation. Sophie felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. It was one thing to dream of the moon, to picture herself standing on its surface. It was another thing entirely to be hurtling through space toward it. As the spacecraft began its descent towards the lunar surface, The shaking grew more intense. The atmosphere inside the cabin became warmer, the vibrations more pronounced as they neared the moon's surface. "Brace yourself," Theo said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "We are entering the moon's atmosphere now. It is going to be bumpy." Sophie gripped the sides of her seat, her heart pounding as the ship descended. Outside the window, the moon grew larger, more detailed. She could see the craters and dusty plains stretching out before them. The dream was becoming reality, and Sophie could barely comprehend it. The ship shook harder, and Sophie's stomach lurched. "Is this normal?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Totally normal," Theo replied. "Hold on. The landing gear is deploying now." The shaking intensified for a moment, then suddenly stopped. Sophie looked out the window and saw the lunar surface just below them, dusty, barren, but so much closer than she had ever imagined. Then came the thud of the spacecraft's landing legs, making contact with the ground. "We have landed," Theo said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We made it." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. They had done it. She was standing on the moon. She felt the weightlessness of the moment and the enormity of it all. There were no words to describe the feeling. She could see the earth in the distance, a small, fragile blue orb floating against the blackness of space. She had made it. They had made it. Chapter 9. The Quiet Before the Storm. The first few moments after landing were pure euphoria. Sophie and Theo suited up in their space gear, ready to step outside. With the spacecraft airlock open, they gingerly descended the ladder onto the moon's surface. The dust beneath their boots kicked up in slow motion, and Sophie took her first step onto the barren landscape. The silence was overwhelming. The moon was a world without sound. No wind, no animals, no people, just the stillness of space itself. She stood there, her heart racing, as the weight of the moment settled over her. "We did it," Sophie whispered, looking up at the earth in the distance. "We are really here." Theo nodded, but as he turned to check the spacecraft's systems, Sophie's gaze was drawn to something in the distance, a faint, flickering light on the horizon. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but as she focused on it, she realized it was not. "Do you see that?" she asked, pointing. Theo squinted, then looked back at Sophie. "What is it?" Sophie did not answer. She was already moving toward the distant light, curiosity burning in her chest. They had made history, but what was this? Something was not right. Chapter 10. The Mysterious Light. Sophie's heart raced as she squinted at the flickering light in the distance. The barren moon's surface stretched before her, dust, craters, and jagged rocks. But there it was again, faint glow, unlike anything she had expected to find. It was not a star, and it certainly was not the Earth. It seemed too close to be anything natural. She turned to Theo, her voice urgent. "Theo, I am going to check that light. I think it is coming from something." Theo looked uneasy, but nodded, adjusting his helmet's visor. "Wait, Sophie. We do not know what it is. We should stay close to the ship. We cannot risk getting separated out here." Sophie hesitated for only a moment, her curiosity winning over. She had spent her entire life dreaming of the moon, and now that she was here, she was not going to let anything stop her from uncovering its secrets. "I will be fine. I will keep my communicator on. I will be back in 5 minutes, she said, her voice full of determination. Theo sighed, clearly not convinced, but he nodded again. Just do not do anything reckless, and stay in contact, all right? Always, Sophie replied with a smile, before taking her first step toward the mysterious glow. The surface of the moon felt strange beneath her boots, every step a careful, calculated movement. The landscape stretched out in front of her, a vast, dusty wilderness that seemed both alien and eerily silent. But the flickering light in the distance pulled her forward, and with every step, her heart pounded harder. The closer she got, the more distinct the light became. It was not like the sunlight reflecting off the moon's surface, nor the distant, faint stars. It was steady and almost pulsing. Sophie's curiosity bloomed with every passing second. "Lena, do you copy? Sophie, where are you?" Theo's voice crackled in her earpiece, pulling her back into the present. "I am fine, Theo," she replied. "Almost there, just a little further." As she approached the source of the light, she felt a strange tension in the air, as though the very atmosphere around her was thick with anticipation. Her boots crunched against the soft lunar dust, and her breathing sounded loud in her helmet. The light ahead was now unmistakable. It was coming from a structure half buried beneath the surface, its jagged outline emerging from the shadow of a crater. A structure? Sophie's mind raced. Could it be remnant of some forgotten lunar mission, or something else? She approached the object cautiously, her mind racing with possibilities. As she reached the edge of the crater, she gasped. What lay before her was a massive metal object, partially buried in the lunar surface. It was sleek and angular, unlike anything she had ever seen in her studies of lunar history. The structure was smooth, almost organic in design, with strange symbols etched into the surface. There was no doubt now. It was not part of any known space mission. Sophie crouched down, her gloved hand brushing against the cool metal. She could feel the faint hum of energy beneath her fingers, and as she pressed harder, the structure seemed to react, a low vibration pulsing through the ground. "What in the world?" she muttered, her eyes widening with awe. Her mind raced with the implications of what she had found. The object was ancient, its design far too advanced for any human civilization. It looked out of place, yet here it was, on the moon. Suddenly, the hum grew louder, and Sophie stepped back instinctively. The metal surface in front of her rippled, almost like liquid, and then, with a soft hiss, a panel opened, revealing an entrance to the structure. She froze. "Theo, are you getting this? I see it." "What is it?" "Sophie, get back to the ship. We do not know what it is." But Sophie could not pull herself away. The pull of discovery was too strong. The doorway seemed to beckon her forward. Her heart raced as she took a step toward the opening. "I will be fine," she said, almost to herself. "This is history." She stepped into the structure, the darkness swallowing her whole. Chapter 11. The Forgotten Secrets. Inside the structure, Sophie's helmet light illuminated the space in front of her, revealing walls covered in the same strange symbols that adorned the outside. The air was thick, stale, but breathable. Sophie exhaled slowly, her breath echoing in her suit. The inside of the structure felt alien, its design not like anything human-made. There were no straight lines, no obvious seams. It seemed to bend and twist, with curving walls that almost looked organic in nature. Sophie's mind whirled. What could this be? An ancient alien craft? A forgotten outpost? The possibilities were endless, but one thing was clear. This was not part of any space program she had studied. She walked deeper into the structure, her boots clinking against the smooth metallic floor. The air felt strange, like the place was alive. And as she ventured deeper, the hum that had once been faint grew stronger, vibrating through the walls. It was as if the entire structure was awake, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. Ahead, Sophie saw a faint light flickering from around a corner. She moved toward it, the glow getting brighter. When she rounded the corner, her breath caught in her throat. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop the pedestal was a small transparent sphere, glowing softly with an ethereal light. Sophie approached it cautiously, her fingers itching to touch it. The sphere seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. "What is this?" Sophie whispered, her voice muffled through her helmet. Suddenly, the communicator crackled. "Sophie, I need you to answer me right now. Where are you?" Sophie blinked and looked down at the communicator in her hand. I found something, Theo. There is a structure here, and there is this glowing sphere. I told you to get back to the ship, do you understand? The mission is not over yet. We need to get you back now." But Sophie could barely hear him. She was too fixated on the glowing sphere, which now seemed to vibrate with more intensity. The hum in the walls had grown louder, and as she stepped closer, she felt a strange sensation in the pit of her stomach. The air around her seemed to crackle with energy. Before she could reach out to touch the sphere, a soft voice filled her mind. It was unlike anything she had ever heard, warm, resonant, and ancient. "Do you seek to know the truth, little explorer?" Sophie froze, the voice resonating through her very being. Her mind raced. What was happening? She was not imagining this. This was real. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I am the keeper, the guardian of this place. The truth you seek is not easily found, but you must decide. Will you take it, or will you leave it behind?" The weight of the words settled on Sophie's shoulders like an invisible force. Her heart pounded in her chest. The truth? What truth? Was it the history of the moon, of humanity's past? Or something far more significant? Sophie reached out, her fingers trembling as they hovered just above the glowing sphere. "Should I take it?" she wondered. "If you take it, you will learn what lies beneath the surface of the moon, the secrets hidden by time. But beware, for knowledge often comes with a cost." Sophie's mind raced. She had dreamed of this moment, this discovery, this understanding of something greater than herself. But was she ready to face whatever the truth might bring?